You're about to enjoy a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands.
Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the SheEO Leading In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of SheEO. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights, despite their sometimes rocky paths, and found a way to lead in. Today we are here with Jaks Cunningham, founder of the Anderson Group, where connection meets community. Jaks, how are you today?
Doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to hear all about your story because you are quite an amazing woman. Got a lot of energy, always smiling, always cheerful, but I know it's not like that on the inside sometimes, and that's what I always like to portray too. But anyway, what does every day look like for you, or are they all different? Because I assume that they probably are.
There is no one day that is exactly the same, and no matter how hard I try, routine is anything but. And it's really funny. I way back in the day, I did an advert, and the advert was for Garmin, and it ended up in a magazine, and the headline over my head was, "My day is everything but." And I was like, did they capture me? Like, did they know my life? It was just really funny.
And sometimes that happens. Sometimes, you're having a conversation and people can pick up exactly who you are and just share that. That's super cool. So tell us a small, just because we want to get to know you as a person outside your career, tell us a story about your childhood. You grew up in Australia, yes.
I'm a dual citizen. And what's really interesting is I very rarely share my story and my journey to coming to America. I didn't come with family. I did not come with a plan, but I was 4. And I remember my uncle had traveled the world and came back, and his last stop had been America. And he came back, and I remember sitting in my aunt's kitchen, and there was this green chair, and my uncle was sitting in it, and I was sitting on his knee because I was 4. And he was telling me all about America and how fantastic America was and how wonderful Disneyland was and all of these great things. And he talked about California. And I said, when I grow up, I'm going to live near Disneyland. Well, as an Australian, you don't get much closer than San Diego to Disneyland unless you're right next door. So there's a little story from my childhood that a lot of people don't know, that I predicted where I was going to live a long time ago.
That is so cool. And, who knew? Who knew? I guess you knew pretty early on that you were going to be near Disneyland. Do you go to Disneyland very often?
I would like to go to Disneyland more often, but my husband is not a fan. So, sweetie, if you're listening to this is a very subtle hint.
That's awesome. So tell us one word, Jaks, that describes who you are.
Ooh, just one word?
One word. The best, not every word, the best.
Adventurous.
Nice. Now, adventurous when you're going to Disneyland, or adventurous how?
In life in general. The way I ended up coming to America was very interesting and not the more straightforward route that a lot of people think. I was studying to be a Japanese teacher and was struggling with a lot of different things, and went to my guidance counselor and said, I need a break. And I said, but I don't want to stop moving forward with my education, because at the time there was just me and one other gentleman that were like, we were top of the class, and I was highly competitive and did not want to give up my number 2 spot. And so she said, well, let's put you on a path to where it counts as prac ed, which is an Aussie word for practical education. And she put me on the path to being an au pair / nanny in either Italy or America. And America was the first place to respond. And I arrived in this country with $150 in my pocket and one suitcase and no one that I knew, no family. And that was back in the day, like email was a big deal, and the dial-up Skype connection where you could barely see anyone. So technology was not what it is today. And so, adventure has been in my blood since I was a little girl. And I mean, coming to America was a big, giant adventure when I was, 22? Yeah, now I'm giving away my age, but yeah, I was 22, jumped on a plane, one-way ticket it was a return ticket at the time. And I was supposed to go to Europe, and then 9/11 happened. And that changed the trajectory of my entire life.
Wow. Well, that changed a lot of people's trajectory too. That's definitely something in our history that really impacted so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And, we'll never forget that for sure. And, coming from outside of the country and, that's kind of a different perspective too, because you were not a native citizen to the United States. And now, you've got your dual citizenship. But how did that impact you from coming from the outside to see how I think our communities came together, our people came together? I don't know what it was like in other countries. I know here there was a different sense of community and connection that honestly I wish would come back in these times for sure, during this pandemic and the division in our country. That it was very different right after 9/11.
Absolutely. And I mean, that for me was the reason I stayed. It really was. I saw this coming together that I'd never seen before. And I mean, Aussies are known to be, the good old Aussie battler, and you help each other up and all those sorts of things. And there's camaraderie there, but there was a difference. Like, I remember distinctly being at a gas station, and there was a moment with someone else in the gas station, like just a nod of like, it was a couple of days after the tragedy. And there was like a nod, and there was just this sense of knowing that you're safe with me for a really, really long time. And it has disappeared. And it is one of the things that I do wish would come back. And I'm working really, really hard to figure out how I can be a leader in that space, but it did look different from the outside. And I don't think anyone can ever appreciate it unless you were here. And as many countries might have reported what they felt or what their perception was, you could never really understand it unless you were here. And over the years, I've had the honor of meeting people that were there when it happened. I ran the New York City Marathon on behalf of the orphaned children. Like, we got to raise funds to help those kids for their college funds and things like that. And meeting some of those kids will literally, I still can't talk about it to this day because it breaks you. And the sense of community, I've never, ever seen that anywhere else in my life. And it didn't last long enough, in my humble opinion. And I wish it would
I think
come
the
back.
same. Yeah, definitely, because it was appreciation for people outside of politics, outside of your race, outside of your religious background, outside of anything. It was always, I think during that time, it was always about appreciating people for who they were and meeting them where they were. And our differences were to be celebrated and not a division situation. So I hope one day that comes back. And so, just kind of shifting gears, talking about your career, how long have you been doing this, and what was your career before?
Okay, so I started my own business. I went back to Australia in 2012 for a year. And I started my consulting firm in Australia, but I've been in construction, commercial real estate for 16, nearly 17 years, and it was a complete accident. Again, I was starting to be a teacher. And so when I came to America, after I was a nanny, I was a preschool teacher in Coronado. All those children are now graduating college, which makes me feel old, but that's a side note. And then the commute, I'd bought a house in Temecula and the commute was too big. And a girlfriend of mine offered me her job as the front desk manager at a construction firm. And it kind of went from there. I mean, within 6 months, I was bored and I said, can I please have more responsibility? They gave me the role of business development manager. And that was back before women were really business development managers. It really has evolved since then. I would just show up to events, collect business cards, and then hand them off to my boss. Back in those days, that was just how it was done, And so in 2012, when I was in Australia, I wanted to do something a little bit different. And then when I came back to America in 2013, I started doing it full time. And the great thing is I've had connections across the pond too. So I was representing an Australian firm in America, and I actually got notification yesterday that they're actually going to do a project together. And so it's with Heinz Development. So Heinz in Australia. I actually had a meeting with them the day before my wedding, which was really kind of funny because no one at the table knew that I was getting married the next morning or the next evening, sorry. And I just got notification that they're doing an insanely large project with my client, which makes me super happy. So yeah, I've been doing it for over a decade, and I was doing it before it was allowed, I guess you could say. People kind of used to tell me I was crazy and that there wasn't really a market for it. And that, I wasn't really going to end up doing what I'm doing, and, that I should probably look at something else. So yeah, I've been doing it for a while now.
So they were thinking that you were going to fail before you actually failed.
Very, very true. Very true.
Very interesting, because I think, knowing you, that you probably looked at that and said, that's a challenge. I think I'm going to prove them wrong.
I do have a tendency to do that, and that goes back to childhood.
Yeah.
My dad used to tell me, if I told you you couldn't do something, you'd go figure out how to do it. And he's not wrong, still doing that. Yeah, I think too, it's not necessarily about proving anyone wrong. I think it's about asking myself, what can I do? And is a no really a no, or is it someone's perception of what they think is possible? And the more I learn and the more I speak to people from different areas of life and different avenues, I'm learning that it really is just that people are coming from their perception. So when someone says to you, oh, that can't be done, it's actually more about their perception than it is of what they think of you, it's funny because as I had mentioned earlier, was just listening to your and Sue Ann's interview, and you made a fascinating remark that I love and I'm going to take and use as my mantra. But you said, I know I'm going to be 100 years old and still learning. And I love that, because I feel like the older I get, the more I learn and the less I know. And in the sense of that every time I learn something, I'm like, wow, I really didn't know. And so I'm going to tie that back to that. It's when people are closed to other ideas, I think that's where that, oh, you're not on, you're going to fail. That's where that comes from.
Well, that's entirely true. And, there are a lot of people that say, oh, that can't be done. And then it ends up totally happening. And sometimes, it's right away. Sometimes it's 5 years down the road. But a lot of times we just close our minds because we don't believe it's possible. I'm going to give you an example. and it's with transportation. Remember when you used to watch the Jetsons? Or maybe you didn't as a kid,
yes,
but I did.
yes.
Okay, so the Jetsons. You watch the Jetsons and you're thinking, there is never going to be a time where things are flying in the air that are personal vehicles. Well, guess what? That time is coming, and it's coming pretty soon. And I remember thinking, that's never going to happen, only because my perception was closed because it seemed too outlandish. Just like, there was, a time where being on the moon, going to the moon seems so outlandish, and it's not possible. But truly, yesterday's ideas are tomorrow's realities. Or maybe it's today's ideas are going to be tomorrow's realities. And I think the jump in technology is so much more quick now that we're walking around with our hands, a personal computer. Who thought that could even happen?
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems very outlandish. But again, technology, I think, is changing that. And, back to what you were saying, it's just someone's perception that it can't be done, but truly it will be done. And I know I remember that I used to always think, well, someone says that I can't do something. Well, that means I'm going to have to go out and I'm going to have to bust my booty and make it happen. Because I don't like someone to say you're going to fail before I've even tried.
Exactly.
I don't like that. I don't like it at all. And, women need to listen to this, and everyone needs to listen to this, honestly. If someone tells you can't do something, that's, again, back to what you said. It's their perception. You truly can if you put your mind to it and you're willing to put in the hard work.
It's very, very
in the most
true.
cases.
Oh, no, it's 100% true. And, two things that just popped up for me when you were saying that is that, my dad, when I remember he dropped me off at the airport to come to America, he said to me, I think you're making the greatest mistake of your life. And I knew in that moment that I was actually making the smartest decision of my life, because I recognized for the first time in my life that my dad had irrational fears that had nothing to do with me, and that had nothing to do, and it had to do with what he didn't know and what he felt uncomfortable around. And I actually had this conversation this morning with actually Carrie Bob and Allison Weiss, two people that I know you know very, very well. And we were talking around how other people's fears hold other people back, and that it is just exactly that. When people don't want to get uncomfortable, and something new makes people feel uncomfortable. And when you allow that discomfort into your life and accept it and go, oh, this feels weird, this feels odd, and it's not a safety breach, then you're onto something, in my opinion. There's something there. And that's what, if I could give any advice to any woman, unless it's a safety breach, go for it. No matter who says, even when you're telling yourself, I can't do this, I'm going to say rubbish, you can. You just need to find something. Text a girlfriend, reach out, send her a message and say, I love you, I'm thinking of you, even if we're both struggling together today. Because there's something deep inside that needs to come out when you are starting to get uncomfortable. That's when you're onto something.
Well, that's when the growth happens.
Exactly.
When you're pushing outside the comfort zone, that's when you are going to grow and become better at something. And I have to tell you, I used to be terrified of public speaking. I'd be like, sweating, clammy hands, shaking practically. And then I got to the point where I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm loving this because I have something to share. I have something that will maybe inspire other people. And I have something that I know what I'm talking about. I've gotten well versed in it. I have done the work. I need to share this with other people. And, again, that growth happens when you are pushing outside of the comfort zone. And I tell young people all the time, try something that feels a little uncomfortable, a little dangerous, not physically dangerous, but, scary for yourself, because that is when you are going to, expose yourself to different things that maybe, are outside of that comfort zone, but you may find that you are so passionate about that. And when you do, you're actually going to, again, propel yourself into something different. So, just kind of talking about success and challenges and failures. Do you want to share something, maybe a success, what you maybe see as success, and then maybe some challenges that have led you there?
Yeah. Yes. So for me, I recently had what I feel like has been the greatest success of my career so far. 3 weeks ago today, actually, and here's the irony is it's exactly 3 weeks ago that check-in started for it. I was honored to do an event that benefited the Carrie Bob Foundation. And it came from this gut instinct conversation with Carrie and Allison in New York. I just had this feeling I had to do this event. And we incorporated two incredible gentlemen as speakers and another incredible woman in our industry, Kelly Moden. The two gentlemen, one was Lex Gillette. He's actually a blind Olympian. And then Jerome Avery, who actually was his guide for quite a while. And I just had this feeling that if I put those 5 people on a stage, that magic was going to happen. I still am getting feedback from people in regards to that. And for me, that's my greatest gift, I feel, in that I'm embracing that my success is when I connect people and let the magic unravel on its own. And you know what? That's just my talent. And I've been struggling for years to try and make success like what we call paper success out of it. And I realized that, you know what, I'm going to stop trying to make a paper success out of it. And I'm just going to go for it and let the magic, unravel. And I think the biggest failures I've had is trying to fit into other people's perception of what success is and letting go of what success looks like for other people. And, for me, I feel very lucky. I have a really lovely life. Am I the richest person in the room? Hell no. Am I the prettiest girl in the room? Hell no. Am I the smartest girl in the room? Hell no. And guess what? I don't want to be because I don't need to be. I have an incredible group of friends that I love and support, and they love and support me. I've worked really hard to have the marriage that I have today. And you know what? I worked really hard to become a dual citizen. And those 3 things for me equal success, and is every day perfect? It is far from perfect, but life is full of fun and life feels good. And that to me is success. And when I lost and shed what other people thought, looked like success, I started to become a whole lot happier. It took me a lot longer than I would have liked to admit to get there, but I feel like I'm finally there.
I feel like you're saying less orchestrated and more organic.
Yes. And more authentic to what is real for me. And one of the things that I think about too, when you say that, I'm like, oh, wow, there's power in that organic authenticity. But more than that, to take it to the next level, when I started to get vulnerable, that's when things started to show up in my life. Because you can be authentic without being vulnerable, but you cannot be vulnerable without being authentic. And I think that marriage of those 2 things is the key to success. I really do believe that, because it leads you to your success, not what the world tells you success looks like. Success for you. And it's going to look different for everyone.
Well, of course, because something different makes each one of us happy. And, the success is really, you're right, it's different because for some people, it's all about the money. For other people, it's all about how they're affecting people around them and the world, right? Because, a lot of us don't make a ton of money, but we're making a difference in the world. And that to me is success as well. Like for me, when on my tombstone or at my eulogy, I don't want people talking about how much money I made. I want people talking about how I changed their lives and how I made them feel. That's what's important to me. And it's not important to everyone. And again, back to your point, success is going to be different for each one of us. So, just thinking about career, life, how do you juggle those responsibilities and find balance? Because that's a tough one.
I don't believe in balance.
Okay, so tell me what you think.
I believe life is a seesaw. I believe that life is a roller coaster. And actually, I got to listen to Randy Zuckerberg, who is Mark Zuckerberg's sister. And the funny part is, side note, she's like, don't hold it against me who my brother is. I think it's really funny that she says that.
That's funny.
She's brilliant on stage, absolutely brilliant. And for me, she brought to the forefront and gave permission for women to say, life is messy. And is there really ever a balance? And she said no. And I was like, the whole room just like practically stood up and applauded her, because it was that permission that we all needed to hear, that, what, is there really anything such as balance? What does balance really even mean? And the reality is, balance is going to, just like success, balance is going to be something different for someone else. Like I have friends who think I'm crazy because I love to travel a lot and I spend a lot of my money in the travel bucket. And for some people that's too much, and that's okay. But that's just, I don't believe in balance. Some days I get my workouts in and I feel fantastic and I eat all the right foods and I get to do all my to-do lists. And there are other days when I just completely fall apart and it's a red hot mess. And, but that's life. It's how you experience it for me.
Well, I think we all have those days where we look in the mirror and we go, gosh, I'm failing today because I can't balance everything. But you know what? You're right. It is going to look different. And I think it's cyclical too. You might have a season of your life that's really tough and then it becomes so much easier. And, then again, sometimes people have just a really hard career and it creates a lot of chaos. But then, you need that space where you've got some downtime, whether that be with your family, whether you're working out or whatever brings you joy. You've got to find that time to do the things that you really do enjoy and love to do, and spend it with people that you enjoy being around, because that helps you do, handle those other stressful times so much better. For sure, when you're too stressed and you've got no balance as far as, mental balance, you're just going to be too lopsided and you can't be as efficient as you need to be. So talking about, you walk into a room of young women, they want to become leaders. What are some lessons that you've learned that you'd like to share with them, and things that you have really that have helped you in your life?
I actually had this conversation yesterday with an incredible young woman who I foresee is going to be a shining star in our world. And I said to her, because she got told by a leader in our industry that she'll never make it as X, Y, and Z. And I went, but do you want to make it as X, Y, and Z? And she's like, well, I'd like to try. And I said, so go find someone who's doing exactly what you want to do, or they're the kind of person you would like to be when you grow up, kind of thing. And go and talk to them. Go take them out for coffee. Watch what they're doing in their life, and ask them what their pain points are. Figure out what things you can avoid. That for me is number one. But the other piece of it too is, you never know who's going to be your greatest ally. And I learned very, very early on in life that you really shouldn't tick people off just because you think you're in a position of power, because the reality is that is going to come and bite you really, really hard. Because at some point, that person is going to be sitting across the table from you, and they're going to have more to say at the table or more of a decision than you do at the table. And so I always like to tell young men and women that just be gentle with your power, because power is actually really not real. And so when you think that you can have something over someone, like if you're the decision maker in the room for, like, let's say a vendor or something, be very gentle, because the reality is that person there can help you more than you can help them. And so you never know who your greatest ally is going to be. I can tell you this, I have been shocked so many times over who has been my greatest ally.
Well, back to that is an excellent point, because back to what you were saying, you can't do anything yourself, right?
No.
In life, it doesn't matter how much power you have or what you perceive as power. It's everyone working together, and you can experience a lot of resistance if you're not good to people. My whole thing is, I always tell people, just be a good human. It doesn't matter what someone's politics is. It doesn't matter what their religion is. It doesn't matter if they're different from you. In fact, it's better if they're different from you, because when you're trying to move forward in a together, because you need other people to come along with you, you're learning valuable information. Back to my point of always learning something until I'm 100 years old and my life is over. You've got to figure out how to bring all of those collective voices forward, because you're not going to get it done by yourself. No one is working in a bubble, and no one else around them is affecting their life. It just isn't. It doesn't happen like that. You've got to figure out how to work and bring people together to be the most effective that you can possibly be, in my opinion. And, that kind of leads me to the next thing. And you may have already said this, but if you had some advice, you sit down with, some young women that are looking to you for a tidbit of information that they can just take away and kind of tuck inside themselves, what would that advice be? What would that look like? As far as, what do you want to do as a woman, and how can you instill some confidence and wisdom into some young women?
That's a really powerful question, and I don't take that lightly. To me, the greatest advice is to share the things that help me grow in my life, which is that it's okay to be fearful, but ask yourself, is it a safety breach or is it excitement? Because there is the psychological proof, right? They're actually the same thing, unless it's a safety breach, right? If you're fearful, you know what? Move forward, because that's where the magic is. Because when you're fearful, you're going to step into discomfort. Then you're going to experience magic. The other piece of advice isn't really about our careers as such, as opposed to some of the greatest things I've done for myself that have helped me grow as an individual. And I give this advice to, it doesn't matter what age woman, take yourself out and go sit in a restaurant by yourself. Learn to enjoy your own company, travel by yourself, and go see and experience things on your own, because then you will figure out what you truly like more than anything. And that is the most powerful tool I think a woman can ever have, is to know herself and accept all pieces of herself, the good, the bad, the pretty, the ugly, all of it, because we all have those pieces. And the only way you're going to get to know yourself is to spend time alone. And even when it's uncomfortable, it's healthy for you. It really is. And it's okay to be alone.
I love it. That is really good advice. So, Jaks, what's next on your journey? What are you going to do next?
There's a lot of things kind of brewing. I'm not going to lie. I don't know that I even have the full answer. I've been connecting a lot with a lot of different people. I hope motherhood is in there. I mean, it would be a blessing. I'm also embracing that if that's not meant for me, that's okay. I hope that what's next for me is to create a deeper connection with my community, that they trust me and know that if I make a connection for them, I'm doing it just for the betterment of them. That there's no, that's just all I'm here for, is to help them be the best version of themselves. And I believe that comes through connection.
I firmly believe in that too. Helping others. And, as women too, I think, there are the mean girls out there.
Oh, yeah.
And those are the ones that we need to say, nope, you're not going to do that. We're going to work together with our sisters, and we're going to elevate them and help them become the best version of themselves. I actually just started talking about mean girls, and there are quite a few of them, and we all experience them.
Oh, yeah.
There's always going to be someone in the room that's more smart, more beautiful, more successful, more this, more that. But guess what? We all have something to bring to the table, and when we're elevating other women, we all do better, for sure. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? To speak to the mean girl thing, something that has helped me in the last 6 months is I read a book that Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Perry wrote called What Happened to You? And rephrasing the question of what's wrong with you to what happened to you. And so when I come across a mean girl now, or a mean guy, doesn't matter, I sit there and I go, what happened to you that makes you so angry and so bitter? And I've actually started asking the question out loud. I've actually started asking the question, and I get some very shocked faces of like, wait, what? What do you mean?
I love it.
And
I
it
love
changes
that.
the conversation. Changes the conversation. Because that's the
I think
reality.
it does. Yeah.
When someone's
Yeah.
mean, they're coming from a place of fear, and they're coming from
And hurt.
Exactly. And fear
And
comes
hurt.
from deep hurt.
Sure.
And so rather than looking at a mean girl and going, no bueno, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to embrace you, and I'm going to figure out what happened to you. And maybe I can connect you to a person, a place, an experience, a podcast like this one, or a book that will help them understand their own meanness.
Yeah.
That's even a word.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, no, it works for me.
I'm like, wait, is that an Australianism, a Jacksism, or a made-up word?
We'll just call it a Jacksism. Jaks, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and sharing a little bit about yourself and your wisdom too, and really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for this and what you do for not just women, but the community at large. You know what? You are an incredible leader. And you've already, what you were saying earlier about, on your tombstone or whatever, it's already being said because it's true. You are a leader in what leaders should look like. You are the typical what Simon Sinek and Gary Ridge and Brené Brown, they're all talking about servant leadership. And you are the perfect example of servant leadership, especially in your role as, what most people say, the dirty word of being a politician. You actually you've made it a new word, and you give me a whole lot of hope for the future. And I am so grateful for you and your presence and for stepping into such chaos is the only way I can describe it. And I am so grateful for everything that you're doing.
Aw, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for everything.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learn how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with CEO host Rebecca Jones.
You have been listening to a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands. Find more stories at cloudcast.us.